Call it misinformation, disinformation, or flat out lies. A good portion of the BC NDP's election campaign strategy has been focused on smearing the Conservative Party of BC and their candidates as some sort of conspiratorial bigots who will use Trump-style politics to destroy the lives of British Columbians. The BC Conservatives will bring mass cuts to healthcare and stomp on LGBTQ plus rights is just some of the prominent NDP allegations being parroted by the legacy media. But how much, if any of it, is true? I'm Drea Humphrey with Rebel News just before BC's 43rd general election concludes on Saturday, October 19th, to talk about it. At Rebel News, it's a full-time job, times 3, to bring you the other side of the story to what the legacy media presents, especially during an election, when that media seems hell-bent on parroting the claims of one party over the other, without taking a deep dive into whether what's being said is actually true. Recently, at our website called bcdecides.com, which is also where you can join us this Saturday at 7 p.m. to watch our live election night and outcome coverage, I brought you this report, which let you know the truth about some of the tantalizing posts incumbent Premier David Eby and his NDP party have been circulating that at first glance painted their electoral contender John Rustad, who leads the Conservative Party of BC, as some sort of science-denying anti-vaxxer who wants kids to die from the measles. Today's report serves as a part 2 of election debunking of sorts. This time taking a closer look at a couple of the ways that the BC NDP and the media they back through mass government advertisements are smearing the Tories. Beginning with one of BC's most important election issues, our critically understaffed and overburdened healthcare system. While the NDP, Conservatives, and Green Party have all pledged to make big healthcare moves to address the province's healthcare issues, Eby and some of his MLAs have been telling the public this about the BC Conservatives.
But it's about whether or not the people who are on the ballot are willing to stand up and commit to British Columbians that they will build a healthcare system that can look after people in British Columbia. And you can't do that by cutting $4 billion. The consequences of that are longer wait times, fewer staff, fewer doctors, fewer people to clean the hospitals, closure of facilities.
Page 12, what he is proposing is $4.1 billion, $4.1 billion in cuts from our healthcare system at a time when we should be spending more money on healthcare to hire more doctors, hire more nurses, invest in the infrastructure, and ensure we have a quality public healthcare system. What does John Rustad want to do? He wants to privatize our healthcare system, and he wants to take $4.1 billion out of it.
A $4.1 billion cut to healthcare? When certain ERs keep closing, cancer patients wait months to see an oncologist, and many British Columbians still don't have a family doctor? That's a claim to make a lot of British Columbians reconsider voting for the BC Conservatives, if true. But it's not. Consistently, the BC Conservatives have pledged an initial increase in spending and innovation to improve the healthcare system. And page 12 of the Conservatives' Patients First healthcare model, which the BC NDP's Ravi Palmar, who is seeking re-election for Highlands Juan de Fuca, claims to have in his hand when he spread that disinformation, says nothing about the Tories planning to make such cuts to healthcare. Instead, it references an assessment of the future of healthcare projects and how Canadian health spending as a percent of GDP will increase by 2040 on its current path, and that if addressed with reforms and modernization, it can bring about savings and reductions. And to address the province's healthcare crisis, which we've reported on before, among many things, has resulted in an estimated 3,300 British Columbians dying while waiting for surgery or diagnostic testing, and the incumbent BC NDP government paying around $16 million since last May for some cancer patients to go to Bellingham for radiation therapy. The Conservatives say they will implement a universal health care for everyone under a single-payer system that delivers care through both public and non-governmental facilities, ideally allowing for shorter wait times, correcting staff retention issues, and more.
And David Eby likes to go out and talk a lot about the Conservatives. Matter of fact, he talked about us twice as much as he talked about himself in his platform. And I'm okay with that, I'm okay with that kind of stuff. But just today he was in Nanaimo and he was saying the Conservatives are going to cut $4 billion out of healthcare. That's just a pure lie. We are going to be adding $3.8 billion over the first 3 years into our healthcare system because we need to make sure that we put the things in place. But he just, for whatever reason, he likes to lie. And he says, we're going to bring in US-style healthcare in British Columbia. And I'm like, we've talked about the European model now for 4 months. I think, David Eby needs a geography lesson. He's got to figure out where Europe is versus the United States. But anyway, I suppose that's a failure of our education system. But
nevertheless, the $4.1 billion cut lie lives on, to the point that it's been translated and printed on the front page of multiple newspapers for our Farsi-speaking community. And even hard-working healthcare workers who've been duped by the NDP are participating in fear-mongering propaganda ads like this.
As a physician, as a provider of care, I'm quite concerned that $4.1 billion cut will translate to less doctors, less nurses, less occupational therapists, less physiotherapists. To me, that translates to poor healthcare and undoing a lot of the progress that has been made.
What's that saying about if you repeat a big lie enough times, eventually the people will believe it? And now, all of a sudden, we're to believe that NDP supporters care about losing medical professionals when they've been silent and in some ways applauding the BC NDP for firing thousands of medical professionals who did not get an experimental jab that does not stop a virus and drove countless more into taking leave or quitting or retiring early. In contrast, between Rustad's Conservatives not only pledging to end mandates, and to fire Dr. Bonnie Henry, who kept them in place longer than any other jurisdiction in North America, but also to review how best to compensate our heroes who were punished by her orders, the NDP's Ravi Parmar takes the NDP's position quite nicely here to illustrate its hypocrisy.
We've had incredible leadership from our Minister of Health, Adrian Dix, even more incredible leadership from Dr. Bonnie Henry, and we led not only the country but North America in our approach to addressing the pandemic and addressing the challenges with COVID-19. And what was really important was the driving factor in that was letting science prevail, getting politics out of the way and letting scientists like Dr. Henry make the decisions she needs to make. And so when I caught a glimpse of your interview with John Rustad last week, where he said very clearly that he would take our public dollars, the taxpayers of Kelowna, the taxpayers of British Columbia, and use the dollars that we need to invest in healthcare, the dollars we need to invest in housing and infrastructure to keep people moving, the dollars we need to ensure that we can make life more affordable and address the cost of living issues impacting so many people all across British Columbia, and give that to anti-vaxxers, had my head spinning in terms of what he had to say. And so this is John Rustad, a leader of the BC Conservative Party. And what's unfortunate is he has extreme views, and we are seeing Trump-style politics here in British Columbia from John and his political party.
Which brings me to the next NDP distorted political issue that's been all the buzz, and that's about SOGI 123. The province's sexual orientation gender identity program in schools and what the Conservative Party plans to do about it should they form government on Saturday, October 19th. But first, can all of us who've been a part of this take a moment to give ourselves a pat on the back for the fact that this has even become a debate in the election and that the BC Conservatives have pledged to remove SOGI from schools? Whether it's those of you who have signed and shared our massive petition at stopclassroomgrooming.com calling for political leaders to end the sexual indoctrination of our kids in schools, or those of you who have also been sounding the alarm in different ways, including by sharing our many reports on that site that expose the promotion of gender-confusing and sexually explicit materials like this being normalized in NDP-run schools. You are to be commended for taking a stand for protecting child innocence. And since doing so should be a nonpartisan opinion, I have no problem saying that I believe the BC Conservatives should too. But not on David Eby's watch. As I've reported before, EB's NDP loves to make the public believe that parents, and now politicians concerned about these issues, are hateful bigots who want to unalive trans kids.
Our government will always stand up for you to make sure that you can be who you are and you can love who you love without fear. To everyone in BC, we need to stand up together against hate. And to those people out there who are promoting that hate, the adults targeting vulnerable kids, politicians promoting hate, shame on you. We're better than that in this province. And all of us are going to stand up against it.
And the media? Well, of course, they're no better. They selectively interview people like the BC Teachers Federation president, the same federation that released pro-NDP letters to its members during this election and warns teachers that they'd better keep secrets from parents by forbidding teachers from telling them if their children are running around school adopting one of the left's 80-odd genders and counting. They do these types of interviews to convey that removing SOGI means bullying will go up and takes us many steps back in LGBTQ plus rights, even though the Conservatives' education platform clearly states it would replace SOGI with a zero-tolerance anti-bullying program that will protect all kids. Time after time, the state-backed media neglects to show the public the books I showed you a minute ago, or the SOGI teacher tools like this gender unicorn for elementary students to list their pronouns, elementary and middle school students to list their pronouns and who they're sexually and emotionally attracted to. Or this cartoon book here, which tells the older kids that it's safe to look up porn and kink online despite rising online child sextortion rates in our province. And even worse is when the lazy state journalists act like all of the above is some sort of far-right conspiracy theory. And instead of even looking into whether the claims are true, they expect John Rustad to do it for them when he's busy trying to win an election.
What SOGI has become is a lightning rod, denying parents their rights to be able to understand what's going on with their child in a school. That, to me, is wrong. Parents have rights.
Parents have rights, LGBTQ people have rights as well, and SOGI has been described. It is a resource that promotes inclusivity. That says simply, it's not sexualization, they would say this is a resource that says people exist. People of various sexual orientations and gender exist.
Of course they do. Of course they do.
So why not support a policy that simply promotes inclusivity of that?
Because that policy has led to materials in schools which, quite frankly, I could not say on air. You would have to censor it. There's pictures in books showing children having sex, and that to me is just wrong.
Where do you have evidence of this?
Yes, I do. I've seen the books. I've seen the library stamps in the books in the schools where this information is available.
We've asked you for this evidence, and your party has not sent it to us.
We can certainly show you the sites that have all this information collected.
You know, they say that propaganda doesn't always lie to the people. Instead, it just convinces the people to lie to themselves. And on October 19th, we will have a better understanding of how much propaganda contributed to the election. Well, maybe we won't, but we will know who will form government. Drea Humphrey with Rebel News. If there was ever an exciting time in BC politics, it is now. That's why I hope you'll be joining me and my colleague Sheila Gunn-Reid, as well as special guests, on Saturday, October 19th at 7 p.m. PST for our special live stream coverage of the final hour of BC's 43rd election and its outcome. It's going to be a real good time and a nail-biting event. Let's do it together. Go to our special website called bcdecides.com. Give us your emails so we can make sure we give you all the information for that exciting live stream. I'll see you then.